Hi guys, in this tutorial I'm going to be demonstrating how I painted the eye on this wonderful parrot painting using acrylics. I hope you enjoy this tutorial. Okay, so we're going to begin this painting in the eyes and on that beak, get those details in first. And for that I'm going to start with a little bit of burnt umber. We're using acrylics today, and just wanted to clarify these are the normal acrylics, they're not the open. I wanted to mention that because recently I've been using a lot of the open acrylics, but I will always state in the videos whether I'm using the open or whether I'm just using a normal acrylic. So I'm going to start with some burnt umber. I want to work wet into wet. I'm using a flat brush, but I'm also going to keep a small detailed brush to hand as well. We're going to be working wet into wet to get that lovely shine in the eyes. So working nice and close. I'm not going to worry about staining the lines too much because we can always come back and get all the details once we've sort of established this light area. So I'm going to go right over the pupil. I can still see it. Acrylic paints tend to be typically transparent, and that's why you need multiple layers of them. So we've got that burnt umber. Now while that's still wet, I'm very quickly going to switch to my little detail brush and a very small amount of white. I'm wiping most of that off the brush. And we want, the actual catch light is coming from above, so we want to create that lovely reflective light right underneath. And again, working wet into wet, I'm able to soften this white into that, that burnt umber colour. Now I'll wipe off that excess, and I'll still use this brush now to sort of smudge and blend what I've got in there. So it's still wet, that acrylic's still wet. I haven't used any medium or anything like that. I'm just working with that paint. We can always glaze over it if we go a bit too bright. I'll go back into the burnt umber. I'll stay with the smaller brush for now, and I'll sort of really almost work back and forth now. There is a darker area right underneath that light, but I also want to just brush a bit more of that umber into there to kind of soften it. So again, it's almost working wet into wet while that white is still a bit damp. And that kind of tones that white down. I'll pick up, I haven't cleaned the brush, but I'm going to pick up a tiny amount of that white again. And inside of this wider area, we'll put an even brighter. So, but much, much smaller this time. The lighter you go, the smaller the area that you're covering. So hopefully that makes sense, that we've kind of got that initial colour on, and then a lighter area, and then a light inside of a light. And that really gives the illusion that the light is passing through the eyes. So I'm going to stay with this small brush now as a detail around. We'll let that dry up. I'm using a little bit of burnt umber. I'll pick up a small amount of purple for now. I do want to go with black, but we don't want to use all our aces too soon. So now now I've got that basic shape in there, I'm able to come in and darken, and I am looking at that reference to make sure I get lovely dark areas where they need to be. So there's some nice dark really low down. So it's really paying attention to those lights and darks. And then I will pick up a little bit of the little black into that mixture, and a small amount of the Prussian blue. And we can use this now to shape that pupil. I will go over this with some more black. Typically with acrylics, you'll need at least 2 layers to get a good covering. Now I'll use that now to really darken these corners. Again, if you look at that reference, you'll see how dark these corner areas are. And I'm avoiding pure black just yet because it does give us somewhere to go if we need that extra little bit of punchiness. Now into a little more black, I'll pick up a little of the blue as well, and this time a very tiny amount of white. Again, we don't want to use pure black and use all of our aces. So this is a very, very dark grey colour, and it's leaning slightly on the bluish tone. It looks very black on the camera, but that tiny amount of white will make all the difference. So now I'm going to focus on this area here around the eye. Just getting a basic block in. I'm going to keep my strokes very soft going into those feathers. Now I will stay with my flat brush for now, and we will add a tiny amount of white, and again we will build this colour up very, very slowly. I'm going to add a tiny amount of white into there, and I think I'll put a little bit of the Prussian and perhaps even a touch of that magenta, or you could use alizarin crimson if you don't have the magenta. Now I just want to put a few marks in here, and again I know these are not showing brilliantly on camera, but we do want to build these up slowly. We don't want to go too bright too quickly. So really I'm just tapping in this slightly lighter tone. I'll give you a slightly different angle there so you can actually see. So you're not aiming to cover all of that lovely darker area that you've just done. I may add a little more white just so it shows up a little better on camera. Now I want to start building these circular shapes around the eye. Remember, this is our first pass, so we will be adding more and more to it as we build up that detail. And again now we will build up those layers a little more, so that's a little more white into that mixture. This time I'm making smaller tapping strokes. I'm going to add a little more to that just so it shows up on camera, but always build this up slowly, and you can put a little different tones in there as well. Feel free to kind of mix it up a little bit, a little more magenta or a little more blue. So now I'm just making these tiny little dots. And again, a few more little marks in here to suggest those feathers. I'm now going into black where I can start correcting some of the shape around the eye. So I want to bring this up a little bit. So at this point you can jump around now and really get a good shape on the eye. And because we haven't used black, that black's really standing out for us. So it's a little deeper here than I've got it. So you can just paint straight over any errors. Correct that little tear duct area. Now I want to capture right underneath that lovely dark line of the iris. I want to capture that lovely lighter area. And again, it's in tiny little dots. Again, don't go all out, we can build on this. So don't use your brightest colour too quickly. And also by tapping that on, I'm naturally creating the little grooves in the in all this detailing. Now I'm going to drop down and leave a dark space, and I'm going to start with these little details. Again, notice it's just really a tapping stroke. And the temptation sometimes is to go very, very bright, and we are going to be going brighter, but we're going to focus where the light is hitting the strongest. So we don't want bright everywhere. And I'll just start to dance in a few darks. And again, I'm tapping that on to break up some of that structure that we've just created. So again, it's always just a back and forth. Under here, we've got a little bit of shadow, so I tap a bit of dark in here to help create that. We'll really start to brighten. Now the light's going to be hitting here, so anything around here is always going to be just that little bit brighter. Just these tiny little dots. The more little dots and patience you can have around this area, then the more effective it's going to look. And right underneath, we've got a little bit more light. I'm using almost pure white at this point, just greying it down ever so slightly, as I really want to capture those little sparkles. Okay, we're nice and dry now. I want to make a lovely grey colour, bluish grey, so we can stay with this puddle here. A little bit of that black to tone that blue down. So that's white, a small touch of the Prussian blue, a little touch of black so it's not so super bright. And I'll stay with this small detailed brush. And I want to concentrate on the shape of that catch light. So it comes nice and tidily across the top. There's quite a sharp area there. And of course that looks white now in comparison to what's underneath. And that's why we don't want to use pure white straight out. I'm going to add a small amount of water to my mixture so it flows better off the brush. And I just want to follow, now I've got that lovely edge, I want to just follow that contour around the eye. We have a little bit, I'm going to add a slight more blue, just a slight more blue to this mixture for the secondary highlight that's actually over the pupil. And we'll put a little bit of a light there. And notice there's a slight curve to this stroke. And that's looking really good. We want one last little bit now of final shine where we use just white on its own. But of course you don't want to cover all that lovely pale blue colour. So inside of this shape, I'm going to just touch and pop a little extra highlight inside. And then the same in this one here, just on that edge. So again, just be observant of where that super bright part is. And then maybe just a little hint in that one. And I think that looks a lovely, shiny, glossy eye.